What's up, everybody? Dollars and Sports here, and today I'm going to be talking about the Atlanta Hawks. This team has been a very pleasant surprise this season, starting season 4-1. I'm going to assume they're going to beat the Cavs tonight and be 5-1, and they're just a very nice surprise. But that being said, I'm not going to be fanning over this team. I'm here to talk about this team as a business because they have some very interesting business decisions to make, and it's going to be very interesting to see what they do. So before we go into that, I am going to talk about the roster and fanboy over Trae Young for a second. So Trae Young, averaging 30 points a game this season, 8 assists, and he's just incredible. He's probably going to be NBA second or third team this year, depending on where the Hawks finish in the standings. I'm not sure where they'll be. I'm sure they'll make the playoffs. I saw someone predicting that they'd be the first seed. That's ridiculous, but they will definitely make the playoffs, I think. Now, around Trae Young, they have a few veterans. So Danilo Gallinari, who's 32, signed him this offseason. In my mind, that deal was a little bit long, but we'll talk about that in a minute. As well as Rajon Rondo, who is 34, but we all saw how good playoff Rondo is, and assuming this team makes the playoffs, he's really going to help. Then they traded for Bogdan Bogdanovic, and they have Clint Capella. Now let's talk about the young guys who are very important to this team. You got Kevin Heurter, Onyeka Okongwu, DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, and then the man who this video is really about, John Collins. So if you don't remember, John Collins did not receive an extension this offseason. So he's entering the last year of his deal. Meanwhile, while a bunch of his peers from the 2017 draft class did get extensions, Collins did not. And that's mainly because Collins wanted the max, and the Hawks did not want to give it to him. And I understand why. Collins is basically on the fringe where he's nowhere near, say, Jason Tatum, who you give the max to without even thinking. But he still might deserve it. Remember, Mike Conley got a max when he was on the Grizzlies. You know, it's tough. And sometimes these players who are not some of the best in the league get maxes because, you know, the teams have to pay them that. So let's talk about the situation that this team's at, because this offseason, while I don't expect the Hawks to offer Collins the max, someone will, and they will match it. So where does that put this team salary cap-wise? So when we're looking here, this is their salary cap chart. Everything's according to Basketball Reference. The projected contracts are my doing, as well as the future salary cap projections are from Adrian Wojnarowski via Twitter. So let's look at this team here. So going into 2021-22, they're going to give Collins the max or match it or whatever. Chris Dunn, he could leave, he could stay. If he leaves, I guess they get a little more flexibility on the bench, but let's just assume he stays. You know, you get your rookies, your bench guys, and this team's at 100, basically at the luxury tax. Then 2022-2023 is where it gets interesting, because once you're paying Collins and you're going to have to pay Trae Young, and both these are rookie scale projections, 25% of the salary cap, growing by 8% a year. You know, they'll probably be 4 or 5 year deals, but I'm not going to project that far into the future because who knows what's going to happen. I think this might even be a little bit far, just going to 2023, 2024, but I think with the contracts expiring, it's what makes sense. So this offseason, they're going to have issues because Rajon Rondo is expiring. You know, that's going to suck, but I don't expect that to be the end of the world, and he'll be 35, 36, so he's going to walk. Chris Dunn, he should be gone. Maybe he'll sign a minimum. I don't know. Don't really care. He's not the biggest contributor. But this team is going to be at the luxury tax, and Kevin Heurter is going to be coming off his rookie deal, and he's as good as gone. Maybe they trade him, but Kevin Heurter's a shooter. Shooters are worth so much in the NBA now, and this team is already at the luxury tax. And I know you might be saying, well, you know, Atlanta, they're going to be good. No doubt they'll be good with this roster. And you might argue, well, they're going to definitely go into the luxury tax to keep Heurter. And that is not the case. This team is one that surprisingly struggles for revenue significantly. They are 23rd in value, according to Forbes in 2020, which is lower than the Indiana Pacers, you know, that team that lives in the cornfields in the Midwest that everyone seems to forget about, but they're surprisingly very good in the East every year. Yeah, that team. that no one remembers. They have a lower value than them. Not to mention, Forbes also put out a statistic called revenue per fan. So I guess it's every single person who says they're a fan of the Hawks and every other team in the NBA, and then calculates the revenue divided by that total. The Hawks, this was from 2019. There was no statistic on it in 2020. Had the lowest revenue per fan of any team in the league, under $20 a fan. So from what I can tell, that means that this team is not going into the luxury tax, especially not to keep Kevin Heurter on a long-term deal. Because if they do that, then they're going to be essentially operating in the red, meaning they're losing money for years to come. And I don't see that happening. Actually, I see them going even deeper into avoiding the luxury tax and probably moving Danilo Gallinari on an expiring deal, trading him for something. Who knows? So this team's still very good. Bogdan, Clint Capella, Hunter, Young, Okongwu, Reddish, Collins. It's a good starting five plus a little bit of a bench, and then, maybe you draft well. They'll probably get someone from mid-level, maybe not. Depends who they trade Danilo for, or if they just basically try to get rid of his contract. Who knows what they'll do. But then it gets interesting again in 2023, 2024, because Hunter's up, and Cam Reddish is up, and Clint Capella's up, and then Danilo's up, but I anticipate he'll be gone by this time. So what are they going to do here? Well, I think Capella's gone, because this team is already at $90 million. They're going to sign Hunter and Reddish, which, it's hard to project what they're going to be worth. They're only in their second year in the league, but is it ridiculous to say that they'll combine for $40 to $45 million? Absolutely not. So that puts this team at 130, 135 million, so roughly 10 under the luxury tax, plus any rookies that they draft, plus, if they trade for anybody, and you still got end of the bench guys you got to fill out. So even if they just have these six and a bunch of guys on veteran minimum, that's the luxury tax. So, yeah, Capella's not coming back. And even then, they're going to have tough calls coming into this next offseason, because, you have Reddish, you have Hunter, you have Bogdan, you have Collins, and essentially no bench. But then you got to pay Onyeka. And I'm not going to project how much he's going to make or what he's going to be worth. But he's going to cost you, you'd have to think at minimum $15 million a year, probably more. And we'll see. This team's in a lot of trouble when it comes to the salary cap. And it's unfortunate because the Hawks have a really young roster. But in a couple years, we're going to be looking at a team and saying, how did they lose all these guys? And it's because they're going to have to pay people, and they're not going to have the money to go into the luxury tax. So this Collins deal is very important for this team, and that's why they didn't want to offer him the max. I'm sure a lot of people now are looking at the team who's 5-1 and saying, oh my God, that's so stupid. Why didn't they offer Collins a max? And sorry, they're 4-1, but they're going to win tonight. They're going to beat the Cavs. But they're going to say, oh, that's so stupid. Why didn't you offer Collins a max? And they didn't offer Collins a max because they wanted to avoid this whole situation, or at least try to alleviate a little bit, because they're not the Knicks. They're not the Lakers. They're not the Celtics. They don't have infinite money. They are on a tight budget here in Atlanta. And it's sad that's the reality of small market teams, but that's why small market teams don't win titles. And that's the reality. And I know Atlanta is not a small market, but in terms of the revenue that they bring in, they are. They're lower than the Indiana Pacers, who are one of the smallest markets in the NBA in terms of value. So where does that leave this team? I think they're good. What is in 2023, 2024, a Young, Bogdan, Hunter, Reddish, Onyeka with Capella, or with Collins. That's good, but it's going to hurt, and they're not going to be as good as they could have been. I think this team will probably be like a 3 seed and probably compete, but I don't see them winning a title anytime soon. So if you're an Atlanta fan, I'm sorry, but that's the unfortunate reality of it, And then we talk about where they are left with trades. Could we see this team making a trade, potentially saying, hey, we can't afford to keep Collins, Heurter, Hunter, Reddish, all these guys. Let's package them and go after a bigger guy, a bigger name, a better second star to put next to Trae Young. That's what I would do if I was a GM, but we'll see who's available. I don't see them going after Harden. Harden is A, a terrible fit. B, I don't think he'd do well in Atlanta for obvious reasons. And C, I don't see it happening. I think Bradley Beal, maybe if he wants out. Another guy to think about is Cat, but he's not a great fit in terms of you'd want defenders around Trae Young, and Towns doesn't play defense at all. But you never know. I'm projecting years in the future. You never know which star is going to win out. And I think the Atlanta Hawks will definitely be in on that. But they're going to be in a lot of trouble. And I don't think this team will be as good as, they could have been. And that's very unfortunate because I would love to see Atlanta be good. Trae Young's such a fun player to watch, and to see him competing for rings, I think would be amazing. But I think he'll be competing, but losing, So with that being said, that's about it. If you watch this whole video, thank you so much. This is my first video on YouTube, and I'm really trying. I'm very passionate about this stuff. So if you do have any questions, comments, or any advice for me, or just opinions on this and you want to talk about it, feel free to leave a comment. Again, thank you so much. If you watch the video to this point, please like and subscribe. I will be posting as regularly as I can and trying to grow on this whole YouTube thing. So feel free to come along with me for the ride. And thank you so much. Have a great day.